pulpit banter, except for we're getting out of the pulpit. Our topic for today was, what is the future of the church? And what better opportunity to talk about it than an old seasoned Rev at 16 years and a brand new one at about 16 minutes. And we'll see what we come up with together. We do have about 82 pages of notes, but we're not gonna do that to you. So we're gonna have, this is unscripted really and unrehearsed. We're gonna have a chat. If you have a burning question, we'll try to get, do you have flats on? You can run out and ask, I'm not gonna. Let's talk about the church. Okay, let's pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart and Rachel's heart and all our hearts be pleasing, O Lord, in your sight. Amen. As we head over, I just wanted to say, I don't know if there's any Clarkson people watching, or if you've gone back and watched the ordination service from last Sunday. I'm filling time for you to go sit down. Thank you. I made reference to the church, and I kept talking in the sermon, in the ordination sermon, about, the church is scared, the church is sad, the church is afraid, and Clarkson thought I was talking about them. That's for an induction service. An ordination service is speaking to a new minister to the state of the church. So it wasn't specific to any one congregation, it was specific to all of them. So we're picking up on that theme now.
Are we on? Nice.
Do I have,
You're on.
hey Rach.
Hey, Rev.
Hi, Rev. Okay, so I got a few questions in our Ask Me Anything about the state of the church, and I thought I would do just a little bit of background, and you jump in too, because you're
Sure.
a more recent grad. The state of Christendom, we've got to back it up a little bit and say, how did we get here? So I wanted to I'll start a little bit about the difference between what is Christianity, or what does it mean to be a Christian, and what does it mean when we say Christendom? Has anyone heard the term Christendom? Christendom versus Christianity. They are very distinct concepts, and we need to make sure we understand what those are. So Christianity came to Canada with the settlers. We don't have to go that far back, but that's how it got here, European settlers. But we're going to focus on mostly the last 100 years. Christianity is a religion centered on a belief in Jesus Christ. That's a thing that we do. Thing that we believe here. It's focused on his teachings, the teachings of the early church and the apostles, and it incorporates both the Old and the New Testaments. Christendom, on the other hand, please understand the difference, church, refers to the historical and cultural sphere where Christianity has become the dominant force. So that's where you find people saying things like, this country was built on Christian values. That's Christendom, which is different than Christianity. It's really, really important that we make that distinction. So Christian beliefs, values, and institutions. That's the old church or nothing should be open on Sundays. That is an influence of Christendom. So Christianity is the faith. Christendom is the broader cultural and societal impact of that faith. Christendom is what came with colonization. Were you stepping in there or just?
Yeah, I was going to say that it lost its footing, Christendom, in Canada around the time that the world wars were happening, but we wouldn't know it. Especially in the later 40s and 60s, it was great to be a Presbyterian in Canada. In fact, to be a part of any denomination, the church was the center of the community. Like Jacqui said, everything was closed on Sundays. It held authority in schools and places of work, and being a church member or going to church would get you a sense of status in the rest of society. Your church attendance could get you into that new country club or get you a promotion at work. But it also meant that there was a certain kind of church that you should be part of too. When a church has that much power to give you status in society, you better make sure you go to the right one. The church that supports the right things and says the right things, does the right things. But these right things were only obvious to those who were in that right church to determine what that right thing was. I
remember I hear it sometimes still on podcasts talking about JFK in the big deal that he was Catholic. Does that resonate for people? Like the big Catholic Protestant divide, right? You had to be the right kind of Christian as well. You still feel it sometimes when churches try to do things ecumenically, right? St. Jude's versus St. Andrew's versus Knox versus St. John's, et cetera, et cetera. You still sort of feel the edges of that you had to be the right flavor of Christian.
In one of my professor's books, Leaving Christianity by Stuart MacDonald, he comments that looks were really deceiving when there were 200 plus kids in Sunday school and we had 500 people in the pews. It looked like we were booming and growing and had a lot of hope in our churches, but compared to the population of Canada and the rate that it was growing, the church actually wasn't growing exponentially like it looked. It was a numbers up, proportions down kind of situation. And compared to the Roman Catholic Church, Protestant denominations were declining actually since the 20s, but experienced only a small exponential growth during the 50s and 60s, thanks to the baby boom. But as fast as they were growing, they were also declining as well.
Who remembers Sunday school with 200 kids? Yeah. Yeah, and we hold that in our minds and in our hearts as sort of like, we need to get back to that. We need to get back to that as sort of the apex, the vision of church at its strength, church at its greatness. We need to get back to that. Now that we're moving far enough away from it, sociologists are able to look back, and statisticians are able to look back and go, that was never the norm. That was a blip. Right? And so this idea that we need to get back to churches that are overflowing with standing room only and 200 kids in Sunday school, it's not achievable. There are not the same opportunities, and community has changed, society has changed so much. We can't possibly, quote unquote, get back to that baby boom sort of false reality, even though many people have that still in their memory of churches bursting at the seams. It was just a blip on the timeline. It's not an attainable reality. Unfortunately, we built a ton of churches during that time because we couldn't keep up. So now we're left with the feeling that church is in decline and churches are closing. But it's because we built for something that was not sustainable and wasn't real. And that's really important when we start talking about what is the future of the church. We need to unhook ourselves from this idea that we can go back to some pie in the sky idea of church that is just laced with nostalgia. We're not going back, folks. We're not going back, and we need to understand why it was that way at that time. There's a stat saying that the PCC started declining in 1964. 1964, and it's been in quote-unquote decline ever since. So people who think, Knox has been in decline since Harry left, or since Mike came, or that ragamuffin Jacqui's been here. No, the whole thing's been going down longer than my mother's been alive. So I do not accept that blame. I'm just teasing you, of course. Don't give me a microphone.
Just one thing to point out as well, at the height of Christendom and when church was central to society, one thing that we talk a lot at youth is the after effects of that we're still feeling. It was a time when we spoke of humility, but we actually practiced hierarchy. It was a time when our churches spoke of loving our neighbors, but we actually only would want to love the ones that were in the building with us. It was a time when we preached the golden rule, but we squished others under us into dust. And so people felt that hypocrisy, and they left. They were hurt by it, and so they went to communities that would actually be loving, actually uphold golden rules and have humility. And this is something that the youth and I still talk about today, because it is still a felt reality that lingers in churches. Not saying that we are people who still practice hierarchy instead of humility, or only loving people within our buildings, but it's a history that we inherit. And so we talk about how the youth, that's one of the main reasons why they feel hesitant to either invite their friends to church, to invite friends to a youth group that's being held at a church. It's much more accessible being held at a home or at a park or out for dinner. And so I think that's a reality that we have to recognize and find creative ways to move through as well.
So I started by talking about the difference between Christianity and Christendom, and here's why that's important. What is on decline is Christendom.
Yes.
Christendom, where it is the major influence in society. It's not that anymore. Christendom, we have been a post-Christendom era now for about 50 years or more. And that's not coming back because that's not actually who we're called to be. Preach. We're called to be what Bill described in Acts chapter 2, right? This sort of motley crew of Jesus followers who do not all look and act and think the same, but are united in their love of Christ and their care for the world that God so loves. We need to get back to that. We need to maybe deal with and lament the fact that this Christendom that we all grew up in, where Christianity was, the major impact and influence in society, is not the case anymore. We are outliers once again, like we were 2,000 years ago. And I'm not saying that to say we're persecuted. Stop. I don't care what's on the Starbucks cup. Get over it. It's not persecution. It's just that we were never designed to be a Christendom. That's not what Jesus came to inaugurate. So we really need to cope with letting go of that. So decline of Christendom is a significant trend. However, it does not mean the end of Christianity. One of my favorite verses is from, look, I brought the Bible down with me. Matthew chapter 16. Hold on. Hold that for me, please. Thank you. Do you have to go to Clarkson? You should just stay. I like you. Thank you. Matthew 16. So it's right after Peter has proclaimed that Jesus is Lord. Right? And that's where you get, your name is no longer Simon, it's Peter, which means rock. And this is a rock on which I'll build my church, which is not Peter the person, but his testimony of faith, right? This is what I'm going to build my church on, is this testimony of faith. And then Jesus says, on this I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. Have you heard that before? And the gates of hell will not prevail against it? We have often thought of this in reverse. And if you're from Knox downtown, you've heard me say this a couple times. We think that it means that hell can't get us. It's actually the reverse. You have to think of us, the followers of Christ, on the offensive, right? Not even hell can keep out the goodness, the church, the grace, the love, the majesty, and the power of Christ. So Christendom, I don't care. I have no truck with it. But Jesus, following Jesus, that's endless. That is eternal, and nothing has power over it. So when you think about the early church going into places that were highly oppressed or that were dangerous, and even today, people going into places that are dangerous in your own communities, places you might feel are dangerous or scary, or places where hell has taken root, remember, it doesn't hold a chance against the Church of Christ. So we can be sad that Christendom's gone, but we are on team something that's going to be eternal right through to Revelation. So that's really important to hold on to. I think we need to jump to where are we at in the PCC. How about some facts? Quick data, census data. I think the most recent one says that 50%, pretty close to 50% of Canadians say they are not religious. The nuns between 2021 and today, I think, has gone from 35% to closer to 50. So unreligious people. I almost said unchurched. No, just not, they aren't beholden to any religion.
Can I just step?
Please
Thank
step
you.
in.
But to note, that doesn't mean that they're not spiritual.
That's right.
It's just that they have chosen to say that they are not affiliated with any religion, but that doesn't mean that there's a lack of want or need or desire to find meaning through a spirituality sense in society.
Yeah. The PCC has been, they're so happy. We've been in decline, I said, since 64. Through the acts and proceedings, they figured out that between 2011 and 2021, we dropped nearly 40%. Now we have, great. And now we have numbers since the pandemic, and it is even more dire. So we're somewhere under 300,000 members across Canada. So we're a small denomination. Do we want to, how is it graduating, Rach? How is it graduating going into a denomination that was on the decline? So a couple, a couple numbers. We have close to 600 churches, I think, coast to coast. And I think fewer than 30 we're looking to even call a minister.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a juxtaposition to be feeling so called to ministry, but then hearing statistics like 75% of churches are vacant, and only maybe 15% are able to call a minister. And so I'm sitting in seminary courses thinking, why? This optics, it doesn't make sense to go into this job when it doesn't feel as though it's reliable or safe. But God is still calling people. There's still hungry people to feed. There's still people who need homes and food. And so I think there's still something here that God is doing, but it's not going to look like what it used to. And that's scary, but also hopeful.
For those who like graphs and figures, come see me afterwards. I've got them from Tim Purvis at Ministry and Church Vocations, just in the drop of like number of grads and number of churches that are even able to call. I think at one point during your last year seminary, there were 28 churches who are actually able to call a minister.
And that's across Canada, not
across
in Ontario.
Canada. But that most of the congregations were vacant. In fact, we have a colleague now, Reverend Roberto in Saskatoon. He's the only clergy in his presbytery.
Presbytery meetings are very
short.
Quick.
Yeah, he just talks to himself and takes minutes. Yep. Here in the Brampton Presbytery, we realized during the pandemic that we were 50% vacant. So that's rough. So every minister who's serving a church is also serving as an interim minister for another church. So pretty dire. We'll get to some good news soon.
We just got to knock you down before we build you back up.
Congregational vibe. Here's the other thing. Come on. Sometimes you got to say the hard things out loud, right? I get kind of crusty at presbytery meetings sometimes. So our moderator's not here right now, so it's fine. Where it becomes sort of just everyone patting each other on the back, like, good job, everything's great. I'm like, can we talk about what's really happening here? Because until we actually address the elephant in the room, it's really hard to make real change. So Rach and I are just saying the hard things out loud to you and then sending you to Trafalgar for a month. It's fine. Good luck, Carolyn.
And I'm going to Clarkson. So.
Viability issues. So this is, again, talking about the PCC, although it would be the same. Just so you know, no, the evangelical churches are not growing and we're shrinking. Everyone's shrinking. So just don't even buy that lie. It's not true. And sometimes where they think it's growth, they're just taking from the smaller churches or the main lines that have closed, right? So it's a lateral move. It's not what they say it is. Sorry. Viability issues, aging members. Declining worship attendance, deficit budgets, deteriorating buildings, dwindling people resources, diminishing missional engagement, that breaks my heart, and minister shortage. So, I mean, lots of reasons why it's tricky to make this work, like it did 20 years ago or 40 years ago or before. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Any PCC questions? Yeah, I know, it's riveting stuff.
Yeah.
Riveting. Okay, we can go to the next one.
Yeah.
Do you want to introduce the next one?
You go for it.
You want me to do it?
Yep.
Okay. One of the questions that comes up with people when we're talking about this is then what is the purpose of the church? What do you think the purpose of the church is? Someone, you shout something out. Mission work, yep. Bringing us together. More? Pardon? Discipleship. Anyone else? Community outreach and?
Learning about Jesus.
Learning about Jesus, yep. You guys are nailing it. This is why we are considered a healthy church in the PCC, just so you know. Good? Anyone else? Friendship, thank you. Great hospitality, right? Like I know folks who tolerate the hour together so they can go have coffee. It's really good. It's really good. It's important. Maybe pastoral care, caring for each other. That's right. Yep. Any more? Or is that it? Have we pretty much hit our limit? Weddings and funerals. Yep. We provide rights to the community. Supporting the youth. Yep. Helping each other. It's one of the few places, I argue, I think it's the last, short of the public library, it's one of the few places where we intentionally are intergenerational, right? If you think about it, everywhere else things are sort of siloed. This is for teens, this is for adults, then you can get your seniors discount at Shoppers. Like everything else is sort of siloed, but you come here, and last year I talked about Isla and Acadia becoming members. So you've got teens who are voting on important issues in the church because they're full members. So that's kind of cool. Baptisms, they're my favorite. I love them. What do we do every Wednesday during the year? Dinner church, we eat together, right? Fellowship, so there's something about eating together that the church has a corner market on as well. This is pretty ancient stuff, Rach. Where does it come from?
Acts 2.
It comes even before that.
Covenant theology.
Yep.
Genesis 12.
Yay, new grad. Yes, Genesis 12. Who remembers Genesis 12? Right, thank you so much. Us Knox people, we talk about it ad nauseum every fall. It's coming for you. So the covenant that God made with Abraham and then Abraham's descendants, right? Saying, I will be your God, you will be my people. I'll bless you with descendants, I'll bless you with land, and I will bless you so that you will be a conduit of blessing to the world. So Abraham and his descendants held on to that covenant, that promise, and then it was reaffirmed in Moses with the Israelites when they were wandering around in the desert. Remember the 10 Commandments? That was part of reaffirming that covenant between God and the people. It was reaffirmed again through the temple worship and down through the kings, which was failed. And then it continued through prophets. And then on one silent night in a little town of Bethlehem, the covenant came and put on skin and was born in the person of Jesus. And Jesus reaffirmed that covenant. He didn't come to start a new church. He came to reassure the people that God was still good for God's side of this promise, and God was inviting us to be part of it. So through Jesus and his disciples and the early apostles, that covenant was renewed again. And then the Pentecost Sunday happened, and the Spirit came and messed everyone up and spread the seed of the church beyond Jerusalem, all the way up to 2025 in Oakville, downtown, at 89 Dunn. So we inherit a long story of promise that says, I will give you descendants, spiritual, I will give you land, the whole world, and I will bless you in order to be a blessing to the world. What is the purpose of the church? To be a conduit of God's blessing to the world. That has nothing to do with Christendom. Do you want to pick up on anything there, covenantal, Rev?
Maybe just thinking about how being a blessing to the world is not part of Christendom, but the church has kind of made buildings and church itself as the only tool for mission in the world. But why would we ever limit God's power to be able to use other ways to bring out blessing and conduit and be a conduit to blessing? So other parts of community can be conduits for God's blessing. It doesn't just have to be the church.
So if the church is called to be a place where we care for each other, where we care for people outside of our walls, if we think of Jesus and his mission and he said it even at his first, when he was preaching his first sermon, He talked about liberating the captives, providing food for the hungry, sight to the blind. If that really is our job, if that is our calling, what does that look like today? So now we need to move to the good news stuff. Possibilities.
Of hope. Well, I think maybe the nostalgia of Christendom, or the nostalgia of 200 kids in Sunday school and so many people in the pews, we get hooked on that as that looks like hope. That's what hope is people in the building, people in Sunday school, people doing all the things that we used to do. And so when that can't look like hope anymore because we don't have the bandwidth of people, we don't have the numbers of ministers to carry out those visions, how can we redefine what hope actually looks like? How can we carry out God's mission in the world to be a conduit of blessing to the world when the church structure is not working anymore? We can't fix a problem with, we can't fix a modern problem with older solutions. We need to find creative ways.
I think I said something about new wine is coming. It's going to burst them old wineskins.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is where you get scared, church, because it starts looking different in 2025. So some examples of new and creative ministries happening across Canada. Have you heard of any? Anyone have any off the top of their dome? New and creative ministries? Here's one. You put this one in. Do you want to mention?
Sure. St. Paul's in Hamilton converted their church to a safe injection site for the community that needed a place to go. They opened their doors not just for safe injections, but also here's a hot meal. Here's a warm place to stay while you sober up. Here is a community of people that you can call if you are in a bad situation.
I want to talk about Georgetown here in our presbytery, but I would like us to seriously consider it once our renovation is done, is Out of the Cold program, right? If you haven't heard, you can Google that one. Out of the Cold is a safe place for people to sleep at night. It opens, evening time and closes at 8 in the morning, but it's a safe place to sleep when it's cold outside. We have a housing crisis in Canada, and no, it's not not in Oakville. It's here. It's pretty close. We've had people sleeping in our bushes on this property. So wouldn't it be wonderful? That's part of why we have a shower downstairs. When we did phase 1 of New Roads, and we had a shower and laundry facility put in downstairs, was to future-proof us if we wanted to hold an Out of the Cold program. And we have had other churches in the area reach out to us recently, asking if that's still on the docket. So these are new ways of being the church. Rach, will these new ways of being the church bring in tons of money?
No.
Will they cost a lot?
Yes.
And need a lot of volunteers?
Yes.
Is it being the church in the world?
Yes.
Okay. Some people went to a stewardship conference a number of years ago now, and it came out that, look, the money to keep the lights on, to pay the staff, it's not all going to come from the pews anymore. That likely isn't possible. We have to look for other ways, other forms of income. So you'll see more traffic at our churches around things like film crews renting us to use it for lunch times, or the candlelight concerts that we're holding here every month on Friday nights. That's rental income is another way, or leasing income is another way, because these ministries are not money makers, because they're not meant to be. The Church of Christ is meant to be outreach. Mm-hmm.
The church is not a place to hoard its money. The church should always be using its money. Conduit of blessing. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention the Narratives of Hope team that was struck at General Assembly is doing a whole host of things this year of research and meeting with churches and finding what are the different pathways that churches are already doing, and what new ways can we implement in our denomination for possible pathways of hope. One of the questions that they ask, and they have commissioning power as well, so that means that they don't have to wait until General Assembly in 2026 to come back and ask permission to make changes. They can make those changes this year. They have commissioning power. And so one of the questions that they ask that is scary and hard is, what is the church willing to risk? What are we willing to risk in order to be conduits of blessing, or in order to go where God is actually calling us? Are we willing to risk our buildings? Are we willing to risk our budgets? Are we willing to risk hiring expensive ministers? And I know I say that just as being hired as an expensive minister. But what are we willing to risk to actually carry out and be a conduit of God's blessing?
Nice. You put in here about the 1% of church earnings.
Yes. Has anyone heard of Adrian Jacobs before? Potentially not. Adrian Jacobs is an Indigenous person in multiple denominations. He works with United, Presbyterian, Baptists, Anglican, and he has been working for the last 18 years on a Indigenous mission for churches to give 1% of their earnings to Indigenous communities that are in their local area. So for us, it could be Six Nations, for others.
Grandmother's Voice.
Yeah, Grandmother's Voice. And this it's not only a fiscal responsibility that we're partnering with them in ministry work and other work that the Indigenous groups do, but it also is a step towards reconciliation of actively saying that our churches did really wrong through residential schools. And this is a way of working towards reconciliation. And so a few churches, the first church after 18 years of him working on it was the United Church, decided to give 4% of their earnings to the Indigenous group. Nice. In their local community. As I say this right now, I don't know if any Presbyterian churches have agreed to do that, but I think some are considering.
Great. The other scary elephant in the room we have to talk about is amalgamation and closure. These are also possibilities on the table, very real possibilities. We have too many churches in our denomination. We opened too many. I guess we should have kept what we had and just ran more services. I don't know, because now we have so many and so many buildings and an aging congregation, and the costs are going up.
And it feels like failure.
But there's such an opportunity here to end well. So Norval Presbyterian Church in our presbytery ended well last year. They gathered up the people they had left, the finances they had left. They made a decision about all the different ministries they wanted to donate their money to, and the things in their building they donated to other churches. So there are ways to end well so that it doesn't feel like failure, because it isn't. It's served its purpose for its time, and now the resources of time, talent, treasure can go into other ministries. Same with amalgamation. There's this fear that amalgamation is somehow we failed on our own, so we have to connect up with someone else. No, actually, we do our best work when we work together. We need to stop imagining church as being a bunch of isolated silos. Everyone's doing their own thing. Let's come together and see what we can do. I know for us here at Knox, the amalgamation with Hopedale has been such a blessing. Both congregations have been strengthened by it. It's still a lot of work administratively. Taking care of two buildings is a lot of work. But it's been such a blessing for us, and I don't think it's perceived at all as failure, but it's something that congregations need to think about. We have just speaking to the Presbyterians in the room, we have no business having 4 Presbyterian churches in Oakville. Like, that was a bit much. And we're responsible for planting 2 of them. So, oops, our bad. But let's all worship. This July has been awesome, worshiping together. It's been really good. But amalgamation doesn't need to be scary. I know I'm going to be inducting you over at Clarkson, and they have amalgamation on the brain. Did that come up at your interview?
It did, yes. We took quite a few minutes to discuss amalgamation and their timelines, and giving time to remember that it is not a failure. Just like you were saying, it's a partnership, and we work better when we work together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to just let go of the old ideas, guys. That's what we need to do. We need to lament and let go of the old ideas, which is what I was saying at your ordination sermon. Yeah. The church is scared because it thinks it has failed. and it has not. When Christ is at the center, it cannot fail, but it can look different. So we need to find ways to get our heads wrapped around it. For the sake of the world, we need to get our heads wrapped around it.
But how will this make us feel, preacher?
Really sad and scared and maybe angry. And we need to wrestle with that.
I think it also could potentially make us feel exhausted. Like we've just gotten through a pandemic, we've just kind of gotten back on our feet, we've just amalgamated, and you're telling us we need to do more work? Yeah. Are you kidding? There's 20% of our people doing 100% of the work. Yeah. How do we continue with any morsel of energy to fulfill God's vision? But I think it means that we must have time to lament. We must give ourselves time to rest and actually do something with our lament, with our grief. Not just say, oh, this is so hard, the church is dying, the church is declining. Let's actually do something with our lament. In the book of Lamentations, it is a whole book dedicated to how the Israelites wept and grieved over the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians. They portrayed their grief physically, spiritually. They threw ashes on their heads. They beat their chests. They wailed openly. I'm not saying that you all have to do that. It's not very Presbyterian, but we're here for change.
Do that at Clarkson?
Maybe. But my point is that lamenting is a process, just like grief is a process. And if we skip over it, then we're not going to come out the other side with solutions that will actually fix or address the root cause of decline or church buildings closing or not enough ministers to minister people. We have to actually go through the lamenting process. And I get that that feels scary because we're solution-oriented people. That's how God created us to be. And lamenting and grieving can sometimes feel like a waste of time, but it is essential. And it is so essential in figuring out the actual root cause, the thing behind the thing that's causing us to either feel scared to let go, feel anxious to delegate tasks, or nervous to amalgamate or close. If all of these things feel scary, and it's okay that it does, let's think about why does it feel scary? Does it feel scary because we feel as though we're losing control? Or are we losing a sense of our identity because our identities are wrapped up in our buildings and our denomination and the way that we used to do things? I think these are critical questions that we must also address in our lamenting.
She's preaching. Did you catch that? That was preaching. Well done. Thanks. Well said.
Thanks.
I think, because we have to end with good news. Where's the good
course.
news in all of this? That's in our training. So 2 things. First, probably many things. I'd like to reassert what we heard in Acts chapter 2, that the original church, blessed by or created by the Pentecost Holy Spirit, was a motley crew of people who did not have a single address. They were people who loved Jesus and loved to take care of others and worshiped God together and resisted the death trap of empire. That is our origin story, church. We like to think our history is our bricks and mortar, but it's not. It's this motley crew of people who love and change the world. We need to reconsider that as our vision. Or we can go all the way back to Genesis 12 if you want. How are we being God's conduit of blessing in the world? What if we just laid down our denomination for a second and just thought about that? And when we look out into the world, do we see need? Yes. As long as we see need, there's work for us to do, right? And the work will continue until we hit Revelation 21, where there's no more crying, where there's no more illness, where there's no more death. We have a vision and a promise. The gates of hell cannot prevail against us as long as we hold Christ at the center. So we have work to do, and it's going to look different, but I have so much hope. And I said this Sunday night, the fact that God is still calling people, calling Rachel to ministry, tells me that God's not done with whatever this is, that this is still a conduit of blessing in the world. Any closing thoughts from you about youth? They're great?
They're great. come and hang out with them if you want to. A note of youth, if you're thinking what's going to happen to Knox's youth group when I go to Clarkson, I'm considering doing a presbytery-wide youth group. There's been a number
this is so exciting.
of youth that are in other churches in our presbytery. Maybe they have one youth at each church, or a handful of youth, but they don't have enough people to either run a youth group or enough youth to actually form one. So what if we just did a presbytery-wide youth group, where we're not poaching kids and youth from other churches to come to Clarkson or come to Knox. We're making sure that they stay plugged into their local community, but have a space for them to grow and to learn and to have a community of their peers as well. So,
and a voice.
And a voice to go back to their churches and say, hey, this is something we want to try, or this is what we think the church could be and look like. And so there's still possibilities of hope there.
Mm-hmm. So this is the Gen Z. We'll finish with Gen Z, Acts chapter 2. This is what the church looks like for young people. So those who were super stoked about what he was preaching, that's Peter, they got baptized. And guess what? On that very day, around 3,000 peeps were all like, sign me up, fam. And they were all super committed to following the apostles' teaching, chilling together, sharing meals, and praying all the time. Everyone was shook and amazed when the apostles started pulling off mad miracles and mind-blowing signs. And everyone who believed hung out together and shared everything with each other. They sold all their stuff and shared it with everyone based on what each person actually needed. And they hung out together every day at the temple and had meals together at each other's houses. And they were stoked about it and had genuine connections, It was all about having a good time and being on the same page, or chilling at home. That was in parentheses.
Of course, yes.
They were all about praising God and being cool with everyone. And the Lord kept bringing new people to the church every day, the ones who are meant to be saved,
To God be all the glory.
Amen.
Amen.